My sister-in-law stole the names of all my miscarried babies and used them for her kids, then poisoned my prenatal vitamins to cause another miscarriage. She actually thinks I'm not going to ruin her life right now. What's the sweetest revenge you've ever tasted? Raw dogging my enemy's brother. For years I was infertile, but not just any infertile. I was the false hope infertile. You see, I had 3 miscarriages, all in the second trimester. Luckily, everyone was really supportive, except for my sister-in-law, that is, because the first time I cried in her lap, she stroked my hair and told me she would always be there for me. She told me that when my niece, her baby, was born, I would be her godmother. I even started to consider her as one of my closest friends. Fast forward 2 weeks later to her baby shower. That's where she announced her baby's name. As soon as she said it, bile rose in my throat. It was Faye, the exact same name as my unborn daughter. Well, it's not like you were going to use it, was all she said when I confronted her, all while squealing like a pig being lit on fire. Her words felt like daggers. When my husband came over to ask what was going on, I told him. But instead of getting mad, he just laughed. Well, men can be pretty clueless sometimes. So I waited until we were in the car ride home to re-explain the situation. And my husband was the love of my life, but he was also passive due to growing up as the scapegoat of their family, the type to get robbed on the street and apologize for not having more money to give. That's just how she is, honey, he said with a sigh. So I told myself that at least my unborn daughter's name could live on in someone else's baby, and focused on increasing my fertility by being a healthy Pilates princess. But it never worked. A year and a half later, another baby died in my womb. A few weeks later, I was standing in an aisle of Walgreens when I saw it. My sister-in-law had made a post to commemorate her second son. The caption read, "Welcome baby James. Thanks to Emma, my name, for the name inspiration. Her loss is my gain." This was then followed by the pregnant emoji and the skull emoji. By the time she stole my third miscarriage's name, Charlotte, I was numb. She would send me nursery photos with captions like, "Bet you wish this could be for your Charlotte." My husband still defended her, saying I was being too sensitive about just names and photography. After 4 years I stopped hoping for a child. Sarah was pregnant with her 4th child, and made jokes at family dinners about which name she should steal next. Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. That night, something in me snapped. If she wanted another name, I'd give her one she'd never forget. I waited until the next family gathering and broke down in tears. I told Sarah privately that I had discovered something incredible in my late mother's diary, a secret middle name she never told anyone, Lexativa. I said it meant sacred child in an ancient dialect. I even created fake diary pages and showed her a Pinterest board about honoring deceased grandparents through baby names. Sarah took the name and ran. She announced everywhere that she was naming her daughter Lexativa Rose to honor our family's hidden history, and this revenge plan was good enough for me. Until 8 months later, when the universe threw me a curveball. I was pregnant, like 3rd trimester pregnant. I almost cried with joy. No more memorials, no more wondering whether there was something deeply wrong with me. Me and my husband had been waiting to announce it, not wanting to get our hopes up, and that same week, we got the text. It was Sarah inviting us to her baby shower. I wore a flowy dress that hid everything. My husband supported my decision, not giving an F anymore. Sarah had gone all out for this shower, bigger than any before. The whole family was there, plus her mommy blog followers who'd been following baby Lexativa's journey for months. Sarah was in the middle of giving her speech about discovering this sacred family name when I stood up. "Actually, Sarah, I have something to share too," I said, smoothing my dress over my now obvious bump. The room went dead silent. Sarah's mouth hung open mid-sentence. My mother-in-law dropped her champagne glass. 29 weeks today, I announced, cradling my belly. We wanted to be sure this time. The room erupted in screams and congratulations. Sarah's face drained of color. That's when my husband, the saint of the family, stood up and raised his hand. "Sarah, you were saying something about Lexativa? About all that research you did?" Sarah's face had gone from white to red. "Yes, it means sacred child in ancient—" "That's so weird," he interrupted, pulling out his phone. "Because when I Google Lexativa, all I get are medical websites about constipation relief." I had to hold my nose just to stop myself from laughing. The rest of the room was silent. I grabbed my husband's hand and walked out. It was a proud moment for all 3 of us. But I was fast asleep at 4 a.m. when I felt a sharp pain in my stomach, one I had felt 3 times before. Me and my husband rushed to the hospital, but I already knew the truth. It was a miscarriage. Turns out one of my nighttime prenatal gummies had been swapped for something that was fatal to my baby. I instantly knew Sarah was behind it. I couldn't sleep for days after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's smug face at that baby shower. The police said they couldn't prove anything about the vitamins. The bottle had mysteriously disappeared from our bathroom, and the hospital couldn't detect what specific substance had caused the miscarriage. My husband finally stopped defending his sister. He sat on our bed, holding the empty vitamin bottle we'd found hidden in our trash can outside. His hands shook as he turned it over and over. Sarah had been in our house just 2 days before it happened, claiming she wanted to help organize the nursery. I started documenting everything. Every text, every social media post, every cruel comment Sarah had made over the years. My laptop became my constant companion as I pieced together a pattern I'd been too hurt to see before. 3 weeks after losing our baby, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Sarah's best friend Catherine worked at the pharmacy where I filled all my prescriptions. I remembered seeing them giggling together at family gatherings, Catherine always asking intrusive questions about my fertility treatments. I drove to the pharmacy during Catherine's shift. She saw me coming and tried to duck into the back room, but I cornered her near the vitamin aisle. Her face went white when I mentioned the prenatal vitamins. "I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, but her hands trembled as she straightened bottles on the shelf. That evening, Sarah posted on her mommy blog about toxic family members who make false accusations. Within hours, her followers were flooding my social social media with hateful messages. My phone buzzed nonstop with notifications calling me jealous, delusional, attention-seeking. My husband deleted his social media accounts after his own sister's followers started attacking him too. We sat in our living room, curtains drawn, feeling like we were under siege. He kept apologizing for not believing me sooner, for all the years he'd let Sarah's behavior slide. The next family dinner was at Sarah's house. We almost didn't go, but my mother-in-law called my husband crying, begging us not to let this silly misunderstanding tear the family apart. Against my better judgment, we went. Sarah had strategically placed baby Lexativa's bassinet right in the center of the dining room. Every time I looked up from my plate, I saw that name embroidered on the blanket. Sarah kept making comments about how some people couldn't handle other people's happiness. During dinner, Sarah excused herself to feed the baby. Her laptop sat open on the kitchen counter, screen still glowing. I don't know what possessed me, but I found myself walking toward it, pretending to get more water. The browser was open to her email. My heart pounded as I saw subject lines about fertility herbs and natural miscarriage remedies. I quickly pulled out my phone, hands shaking as I took photo after photo of the screen. "What are you doing?" Sarah's voice cut through the air like a knife. I spun around, phone still in my hand. She lunged for it, but I pulled back. We struggled in her kitchen, her nails digging into my wrist as she tried to grab my phone. "Give it to me," she hissed, but I held tight. My husband heard the commotion and rushed in. For the first time in his life, he saw his sister's mask completely off. Her face was twisted with rage, nothing like the sweet persona she usually wore. "She's trying to steal my phone." Sarah quickly switched tactics, tears suddenly appearing. "She's gone crazy, just like I told you all." But my husband had already seen the scratches on my wrist, the wild look in his sister's eyes. He stepped between us, and for once, he didn't take her side. "We're leaving," he said quietly, taking my hand. Sarah's tears dried instantly. "Fine. Run away like always, but everyone's going to know the truth about her." We drove home in silence, my wrist throbbing where she'd scratched me. I showed my husband the photos I'd managed to take. His face grew paler with each image. The next morning, Sarah's mommy blog featured a long post about dealing with mentally unstable family members. She claimed I'd attacked her in her own home, that I'd been faking my pregnancies for attention all along. She even posted a photo of herself with a small bruise on her arm, though I'd never touched her. Her followers ate it up. Comments poured in about how strong she was, how terrible it must be to have such a toxic sister-in-law. Some even started a hashtag, Justice for Sarah. My mother-in-law called within hours. "You need to apologize," she said, not even asking for my side of the story. "This has gone too far. Sarah's considering filing a restraining order." "She poisoned my baby!" I couldn't help but shout. "Don't be ridiculous," my mother-in-law snapped. "Sarah would never do something like that. You're clearly having some kind of breakdown. Maybe you should get help." My husband took the phone from me. "Mom, you didn't see what happened. Sarah attacked Emma, not the other way around." "Oh, please," his mother scoffed. "You always take her side now." Sarah sent me the security footage from her kitchen. It clearly shows Emma snooping through her personal computer. My heart sank. Of course, Sarah had edited the footage to exclude our struggle, to make me look like the aggressor. My husband argued with his mother for a few more minutes before hanging up in frustration. Over the next few days, the situation escalated beyond anything I could have imagined. Sarah filed a report with Child Protective Services, claiming I was mentally unstable and shouldn't be allowed to adopt children. She'd discovered we'd started the adoption process months ago, before our last pregnancy. The social worker who came to our house was professional, but clearly influenced by the concerns that had been raised. Apparently, Sarah's mommy blog followers had been calling the adoption agency, sending emails about my dangerous behavior. "We've received over 50 complaints," the social worker explained, flipping through her folder. "While we have to investigate all claims, I want you to know that organized campaigns like this usually indicate someone has an agenda. We provided character references, medical records showing my mental health was fine, everything we could think of, but the damage was done. The adoption agency put our application on hold pending the investigation." I sobbed in my husband's arms that night. Sarah hadn't just stolen my baby's names, she was trying to steal any chance I had at motherhood. The next morning brought fresh hell. Sarah had posted screenshots of my snooping on her laptop, conveniently cropping out everything that showed her research into miscarriage-inducing herbs. Her followers were calling me a criminal, demanding I be arrested for invasion of privacy. My husband and I sat at our kitchen table, surrounded by printed emails from the adoption agency. Each one detailed another concerned citizen who'd contacted them about my supposed mental instability. The language was eerily similar across dozens of messages, clearly coordinated. Catherine called me that afternoon. Her voice shook as she whispered into the phone. "Meet me at the park on Elm Street. Come alone. I need to tell you something." My husband wanted to come with me, but I knew Catherine would bolt if she saw him. I found her sitting on a bench near the playground, nervously watching mothers push their children on swings. "I can't do this anymore," she said as soon as I sat down. "Sarah's gone too far. The vitamins, she made me switch them. Said it was just harmless herbs to help with your anxiety." My hands clenched into fists. "You knew what they were." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "She had dirt on me. I've been skimming pills from the pharmacy. Just anxiety meds for myself, nothing serious. But she found out somehow and threatened to report me unless I helped her." I pulled out my phone to record, but Catherine grabbed my wrist. "No recordings. I'll deny everything if you try to use this against me. I wanted you to know I'm sorry, and to warn you, she's not done." "What do you mean she's not done?" Catherine glanced around nervously. "She's been stealing your mail, has copies of all your adoption paperwork. She knows which agency you're using, who your caseworker is, everything." My blood ran cold. We'd been wondering why some of our mail seemed to go missing. Catherine stood to leave, but I grabbed her arm. "You have to tell someone. The police, the adoption agency, anyone." She yanked away from me. "I can't lose my job. I have kids too." She hurried away, leaving me alone on the bench. That evening, my husband installed security cameras around our house. We changed all our locks and had our mail forwarded to a post office box. It felt like we were preparing for war. Sarah's next move came at Thanksgiving dinner. The whole family gathered at my mother-in-law's house, tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Sarah arrived late, making a grand entrance with all 4 of her children dressed in matching outfits. During dinner, she kept making pointed comments about people who can't let go of the past and the importance of mental health treatment. My husband's jaw clenched tighter with each jab, but he stayed silent. Then, as we were clearing dessert plates, Sarah stood up and clinked her wine glass. "I have an announcement." The room fell silent. Sarah's hand moved to her stomach in that familiar gesture I'd made so many times before. "We're expecting again, and I've already chosen the perfect name." My mother-in-law gasped with delight. "Oh, Sarah, how wonderful." "Yes," Sarah continued, her eyes locked on mine. "If it's a girl, we're naming her Margaret, after Emma's dear departed mother." The room spun. My mother had died just 6 months ago, her name the last sacred thing I had left. I stood so quickly my chair toppled backward. "You wouldn't dare," I whispered. Sarah's smile was pure venom. "Why not? It's such a beautiful name, and someone should use it since you clearly can't." My husband was on his feet now too. "That's enough, Sarah. You've crossed every line." "Have I?" Sarah's voice rose to a shriek. "She's the one who broke into my computer. She's the one spreading lies about me. I'm just trying to honor family traditions. By stealing the names of dead babies?" My husband's voice was deadly quiet. The room erupted. My father-in-law started shouting about keeping the peace. Sarah's husband looked confused, asking what was really going on. The children started crying. In the chaos, Sarah grabbed her phone and started live streaming to her mommy blog followers. "You can see how I'm being attacked in my own family," she said to the camera. "All because I want to honor my sister-in-law's mother." My husband grabbed my hand. "We're leaving." As we headed for the door, Sarah called out, "Oh, Emma, you might want to check with the adoption agency. I heard they received some very interesting information about your mental health history." We drove home in silence, both of us too angry to speak. When we got home, there was a message on our answering machine from our adoption caseworker, asking us to call urgently. My hands shook as I dialed the number. The caseworker's voice was carefully neutral as she explained that they'd received documentation, suggesting I'd been hospitalized for psychiatric issues multiple times. "That's not true," I said, my voice breaking. "I've never been hospitalized for anything except my miscarriages." "I understand," she said, "but we need to investigate these claims. Can you provide your complete medical history?" After I hung up, my husband found me sobbing on our bedroom floor. He held me as I cried, whispering promises that we'd fight this, that Sarah wouldn't win. The next day, we went to the hospital to request my medical records. The administrator pulled up my file, then frowned. "This is strange. There are entries here I don't recognize." My heart sank as she showed us the screen. Someone had added fake psychiatric admissions to my electronic records, complete with diagnoses of delusional disorder and pathological lying. "This is fraud," the administrator said. "We'll need to investigate how someone accessed our system." It took 2 weeks to get the fake entries removed and documented as fraudulent. During that time, Sarah escalated her campaign. She created fake social media accounts in my name, posting unhinged rants about wanting to steal other people's babies. She sent anonymous tips to my employer about my mental instability. My husband started recording everything. He bought a small camera he wore on his shirt, documenting every interaction with his family. His mother called him paranoid, but he didn't care anymore. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Sarah's eldest daughter, Faye, now 8 years old, called our house one evening when her parents were out. "Aunt Emma," her small voice said, "I need to tell you something. Mommy makes us lie about you." My husband quickly started recording as Faye explained how her mother made her and her siblings tell people I was mean to them, that I scared them, that I said bad things about their family. "She practices with us," Faye said, "makes us repeat the lies until we say them right. I don't want to anymore. You've never been mean to us." We saved the recording, adding it to our growing pile of evidence. But Sarah must have found out about Faye's call, because the next day she posted about how I was manipulating innocent children and turning them against their mother. Her followers were rabid, sending death threats to my social media accounts. Someone posted my work address, and protesters showed up at my office with signs calling me a baby killer and child predator. My boss called me into his office. "I know this is personal," he said, "but it's affecting the company. Maybe you should take some time off until this blows over." I was effectively suspended from my job. Sarah had managed to destroy my reputation, my career prospects, and my chance at adoption, but she wasn't satisfied yet. 2 weeks later, my husband's grandmother celebrated her 90th birthday. We debated not going, but his grandmother had always been kind to me, and I didn't want to disappoint her. The party was at a restaurant, neutral ground we thought would be safe. Sarah arrived late, as usual, making sure all eyes were on her. She air-kissed relatives and gushed about her pregnancy, now showing prominently. During the cake cutting, I excused myself to use the restroom. Sarah followed me in, checking the stalls to make sure we were alone before turning to face me. "You should just give up," she said conversationally, applying lipstick in the mirror. "You're never going to be a mother. The adoption agency has already rejected your application." "Oh, didn't you know? I have a friend who works there." I stayed silent, remembering my husband's camera was recording everything. Sarah continued, mistaking my silence for defeat. "It was so easy, really. Catherine at the pharmacy, my friend at the hospital who helped with your medical records, the social worker who owed me a favor. You never stood a chance." "Why?" I finally asked. "What did I ever do to you?" Sarah's reflection smiled at me. "You married him. You took my brother away from me. He was supposed to always put me first, and then you came along with your fertility sob story, and suddenly he cared more about you than me. So you unalived my babies?" Sarah laughed. "I didn't unalive anything. You did that all on your own. I just helped nature along with the last one. Consider it a favor. You're clearly not meant to be a mother." I left the bathroom without another word, my heart pounding. nothing. We finally had her confession on tape, but when my husband checked the camera that night, the battery had mysteriously died just before Sarah followed me into the bathroom. We had nothing. The next blow came from Sarah's husband, who called my husband asking to meet privately. We assumed he was going to threaten us, but instead, he looked exhausted and defeated. "I found her journal," he said, sliding a leather notebook across the table. "I wasn't snooping. It fell out of her purse. I think you need to see this." The journal was Sarah's, and it was damning. Page after page detailed her plans to destroy me, her glee at each miscarriage, her coordination with Catherine and others to sabotage my life. But most disturbing were the entries about other family members she'd targeted over the years. She'd poisoned her mother-in-law's cat because the woman had suggested she wait to have children. She'd sabotaged her cousin's wedding by sleeping with the groom. She'd gotten her college roommate expelled by planting substances in her dorm room. "I don't know who I married," Sarah's husband said, his voice broken. "The kids. I'm filing for divorce. I'll testify about what I found if you need me to." We photocopied every page of the journal before returning it. Finally, we had real evidence. But Sarah struck first. The next morning, police showed up at our door with a warrant. Someone had reported that we were dealing substances, and they needed to search our house. My husband and I stood in our living room, watching officers tear apart our carefully rebuilt life. They found nothing, of course, but the damage was done. Our neighbors watched from their windows as police cars lined our street. After the police left, we found a note tucked under our doormat. Sarah's handwriting: "Stop now, or next time they'll find something." That night, my husband and I made a decision. We would take everything we had to the family, force them to see the truth about Sarah once and for all. We called a family meeting at my mother-in-law's house, saying we had important news to share. Sarah arrived looking smug, probably thinking we were going to announce our surrender. Instead, my husband connected his laptop to the TV and began presenting our evidence. The journal entries, the photos from Sarah's computer, the testimony from her husband, even Faye's recorded confession about being forced to lie. The room was silent as the evidence mounted. Sarah's face went from smug to panicked to furious. When we showed the journal entry about her poisoning the cat, my mother-in-law gasped. "Whiskers didn't just die," she whispered. Sarah jumped to her feet. "This is all fake. They're trying to frame me because they're jealous of my perfect family." But her husband stood up too. "It's true. All of it. I've seen the original journal. Sarah, you need help." The dam broke. Other family members started sharing their own stories about Sarah's cruelty over the years. Her pattern of behavior became undeniable. Sarah's mask finally shattered completely. She screamed at everyone, calling them liars and traitors. She grabbed a vase and threw it at the wall, sending shattered glass across the room. "You want to destroy me?" she shrieked at me. "You barren witch. You'll never have what I have. Never." Her eldest son, James, started crying. "Mom, stop. You're scaring us." But Sarah was beyond reason. She lunged at me, and this time I didn't back down. My husband and hers had to pull us apart as she clawed at my face, screaming obscenities. "I should have used something stronger in those vitamins," she screamed. "I should have made sure you could never even try again." The room went completely still. Even Sarah seemed to realize what she'd just admitted. My father-in-law's voice was cold. "Get out of my house. Don't come back." Sarah looked around the room at her family, her children, her husband. All of them were looking at her with horror and disgust. "Fine," she spat, "but I'm taking my children." "No," her husband said firmly. "You're not. Kids, come here." All 4 children ran to their father, even baby Lexativa in Faye's arms. Sarah stood alone in the center of the room, finally seeing the consequences of her actions. She left without another word, slamming the door behind her. The family sat in stunned silence for a moment before my mother-in-law started crying. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed, reaching for my hand. "I should have believed you. All those babies. I'm so sorry." The aftermath was swift. Catherine, terrified of losing her pharmacy license, came forward with a full confession about switching my vitamins. She provided receipts, text messages from Sarah, everything needed to prove what had happened. Sarah's husband filed for emergency custody and a restraining order. The divorce papers cited her journal as evidence of her being an unfit mother. He also shared that he'd found searches on her computer for how to induce miscarriage dating back years. Sarah's mommy blog imploded when someone leaked excerpts from her journal to her followers. The woman who'd built her brand on being the perfect mother was exposed as a calculating sociopath who'd poisoned family members and sabotaged pregnancies. Within days, she lost everything: her husband, her children, her family, her online following. The adoption agency called to apologize and reactivate our application, noting that the fraudulent complaints would actually strengthen our case by showing we could handle adversity. 3 months later, my husband and I stood in a courthouse, finalizing the adoption of newborn twins. We named them Charlotte and James, reclaiming the name Sarah had stolen. As we signed the papers, I thought about the long journey that had brought us here. Sarah was facing criminal charges for the vitamin tampering, though her lawyer was pushing for a plea deal involving mental health treatment instead of jail time. Her children were thriving with their father, finally free from their mother's toxic influence. Faye had started calling me Aunt Emma again, and she'd asked if she could help babysit the twins when they were older. "I want to be a good big cousin," she'd said, "not like my mom was a sister." As we drove home with our babies, my husband reached over and squeezed my hand. We'd survived Sarah's campaign of terror, and somehow we'd come out stronger. The twins gurgled in their car seats, and I smiled through my tears. Sarah had tried to steal everything from me, but in the end, she'd only stolen from herself. I had my family, my babies, my life back. And Sarah? She had exactly what she'd always given others: nothing but the consequences of her own cruelty. The courthouse adoption ceremony ended at noon. By 12:30, Sarah was already causing problems. My husband spotted her first, standing across the street from the courthouse steps where we were taking photos with Charlotte and James. She wore oversized sunglasses and a baseball cap, but her rigid posture gave her away. "Don't look," he whispered, shifting to block her view view of the twins. The photographer noticed our tension and suggested we move to the courthouse garden. As we walked away, I heard rapid footsteps behind us. Sarah had crossed the street. "Those should have been my names to give," she called out. Security intercepted her before she got close. We watched them escort her away while she shouted about her rights as an aunt. The twins slept through it all, unaware of the drama surrounding their first official day as ours. That afternoon, we discovered Sarah had been busier than we thought. Our adoption announcement on social media, posted by my mother-in-law with our permission, had been screenshot and reposted on Sarah's new blog with commentary about baby thieves and name stealers. Catherine texted me a warning. Sarah had been at the pharmacy that morning, asking strange questions about infant medications and allergies. Catherine had refused to give her any information and alerted her manager, but the encounter left everyone uneasy. We installed a doorbell camera that evening. My husband also changed our pediatrician to one across town, just to be safe. The twins needed their first checkup next week, and we weren't taking chances. Sarah's husband called the next day with disturbing news. She'd broken into his house while the kids were at school, taking photo albums and baby clothes. She'd also left a note demanding visitation with her children. "The restraining order covers the kids too," he assured us. "But she's getting desperate. She's been staying with different friends, telling them you've all turned against her for no reason." 3 days later, Sarah showed up at my husband's workplace. She'd waited in the parking garage, approaching him as he walked to his car. My husband immediately started recording on his phone. "You poisoned everyone against me," she said, blocking his path. "Even my own children won't talk to me." My husband tried to step around her, but she moved with him. "Sarah, you need to leave. You're violating the restraining order. That piece of paper means nothing. You're my brother. You're supposed to protect me, not destroy me. You destroyed yourself," he said quietly. Sarah's face contorted. She grabbed his phone and threw it against the concrete wall. It shattered on impact. Then she ran to her car and sped away before security arrived. The broken phone meant we lost that recording, but the parking garage cameras caught everything. My husband filed a police report, and a warrant was issued for Sarah's arrest. She evaded police for a week. During that time, she created dozens of fake social media profiles, flooding our accounts and our employers' pages with accusations. She claimed we'd stolen her children, ruined her marriage, and planted evidence against her. One profile particularly stood out. It used photos of Charlotte and James from the courthouse, edited to include Sarah holding them. The captions claimed they were her twins that we'd kidnapped. Several of her old blog followers, still loyal despite everything, shared the posts. My boss called me back into his office. "I know this isn't your fault," he said, sliding a printed screenshot across his desk. "But HR is concerned. These accusations of kidnapping, even though they're false, they're affecting our workplace." I stared at the fabricated photo of Sarah with our twins. "What are you saying? Take extended leave. Paid. Let this situation resolve, then we'll reassess." I cleaned out my desk that afternoon, trying not to cry. Sarah had now cost me my active employment along with everything else. That night, Faye called again. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Aunt Emma, Mom's here. She's outside Dad's house. She keeps texting me to let her in." My husband immediately called his brother-in-law while I stayed on with Faye. We could hear Sarah pounding on the door, shouting for her children. "She says she has new vitamins for the baby," Faye whispered. "Special ones to make her smart like her." My blood ran cold. "Faye, don't open that door. Stay away from the windows." Police arrived within minutes. We listened over the phone as they arrested Sarah. She screamed the entire time about her rights as a mother, how we'd all conspired against her, how she just wanted to give her baby vitamins. They found a bottle of unmarked pills in her purse. Sarah spent 2 nights in jail before making bail. Her lawyer argued she was having a mental health crisis and needed treatment, not incarceration. The judge agreed to bail with conditions. She had to wear an ankle monitor and stay away from all family members. The pills tested positive for a mild sedative, nothing immediately dangerous but completely inappropriate for an infant. It was enough to add attempted child endangerment to her charges. Sarah's former friends began distancing themselves as more truth emerged. One of them, a woman named Patricia who'd been housing Sarah, called me directly. "I'm sorry," Patricia said. "I believed her stories about you. But then I caught her in my medicine cabinet at 3 a.m., going through my prescriptions. When I confronted her, she said she was just looking for aspirin, but you don't believe her," I finished. "No, and there's more. She's been using my computer to create those fake profiles. I have screenshots of everything." Patricia emailed us dozens of screenshots showing Sarah's activity, creating fake accounts, editing photos, coordinating harassment campaigns. It was all there, time-stamped and undeniable. We added it to our evidence file, which had grown thick enough to fill a banker's box. My husband organized everything chronologically, preparing for the criminal trial. Meanwhile, we focused on our new life with the twins. They were thriving, gaining weight, and starting to smile. Charlotte had my husband's eyes, while James had my stubborn chin. Every milestone felt like a victory Sarah couldn't steal. The adoption agency called with a follow-up visit. The social worker who came was the same one who'd investigated Sarah's false claims. She smiled when she saw how well the twins were doing. "I want to apologize again for the investigation," she said, watching Charlotte grip my finger. "It's clear now that those complaints were malicious. We understand you had to follow protocol," my husband said. "Yes, but I want you to know we've flagged Sarah's name in our system. If she ever tries to adopt or interfere with another adoption, we'll know immediately." It was a small comfort, but we'd take any protection we could get. Sarah's next move came through her lawyer. She was suing for grandparent rights, claiming we were alienating her from her rightful relationship with the twins. The lawsuit was baseless. She wasn't their biological grandmother and had no standing, but we still had to respond. Our lawyer laughed when he read the filing. "She's grasping at straws. No judge will even hear this case." He was right. The lawsuit was dismissed within a week, but Sarah didn't stop there. She started showing up at places she knew we'd be: the grocery store, the park, the pediatrician's office. distance, always staying just far enough away to not violate the restraining order's distance requirement but close enough to make her presence known. One afternoon at the park, she sat on a bench 50 feet away, staring at us the entire time. Other parents noticed and moved their children away from her. When a concerned mother asked if we knew her, I simply said she was someone we had a restraining order against. Word spread quickly through the playground. Sarah must have realized her tactics weren't working because she changed approach. She started sending letters to our house through her lawyer, claiming she wanted to reconcile. Each letter contained subtle threats wrapped in language of forgiveness and family healing. "I forgive you for turning my family against me," one letter read. "I'm willing to move past the lies you've spread if you'll just let me be part of the twins' lives. They need their aunt. Don't make me prove how much." We gave every letter to our lawyer and the police. The detective handling her case told us they were building a strong harassment case on top of the existing charges. Catherine reached out again, this time with more information. "Sarah's been texting me from different numbers," she said, "offering me money to get information about your prescriptions. I've blocked every number, but they keep coming." She forwarded us the screenshots. Sarah was offering increasingly large amounts, money we knew she didn't have since her husband had frozen their joint accounts during the divorce. The divorce proceedings were moving quickly. Sarah's husband had been granted full custody, and Sarah was only allowed supervised visitation at a court-appointed facility. According to him, she'd shown up to exactly one visit, spent the entire time telling the children how everyone was lying about her, and hadn't returned since. "The kids are in therapy," he told us during a coffee meeting. "Faye especially. She feels guilty for telling you about the lies. I keep explaining she did the right thing." We assured him we'd be happy to talk to Faye anytime she needed reassurance. The poor girl had been carrying the weight of her mother's manipulation for years. 2 months after the adoption, Sarah made her biggest mistake yet. She managed to get hired at a daycare center in the next town over, using her maiden name and somehow passing the background check before her charges were fully processed. We only found out because another mother recognized her from the mommy blog drama and alerted the daycare management. They fired her immediately and reported the incident to Child Protective Services. This violation of working with children while under investigation for child endangerment added another charge to her growing list. Her lawyer dropped her as a client, citing irreconcilable differences in legal strategy. Sarah represented herself at the next hearing. She showed up in an ill-fitting suit, her hair unwashed, dark circles under her eyes. She rambled for 20 minutes about conspiracy theories and family betrayal before the judge cut her off. "Ms. Sarah," the judge said sternly, "you need proper legal representation. I'm appointing you a public defender." "I don't need help," Sarah insisted. "I just need people to listen to the truth." "The truth according to whom?" the judge asked. "According to me. I'm the victim here." The judge scheduled another hearing and ordered Sarah to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. She stormed out of the courtroom, shouting about injustice. In the parking lot, she confronted us again. This time, my husband and I were ready. We both had our phones recording as she approached. "Enjoy them while you can," she hissed, gesturing toward the twins in their car seats. "You think you've won, but I know things. I know which formula you buy, which diapers you use, where you take them for walks." "Sarah, you're being recorded," my husband said calmly, "and you're violating the restraining order." She laughed, a sound devoid of sanity. "Restraining order? You mean that joke of a paper? I've violated it a dozen times. Following you is easy when you're so predictable." "Thank you for the confession," I said, ending the recording. Her face went white as she realized what she'd done. She turned and ran to her car, but court security was already approaching. They detained her until police arrived. This time, bail was revoked. Sarah would await trial from jail. The judge cited her confession of multiple restraining order violations and the escalating pattern of behavior as reasons for holding her. Her husband brought the kids to visit us the week after Sarah's incarceration. It was the first time they'd seen the twins in person. Faye was gentle and sweet with them, while James and the other children were curious but careful. "Mom's in jail?" little James asked his father. "Yes, buddy. She made some bad choices." "Is it our fault?" Charlotte asked, her 7-year-old face creased with worry. "No, sweetheart. Nothing Mom did is your fault. She's sick in her mind and needs help." The kids seemed to accept this explanation. They played with the twins' toys and helped feed them bottles. It was a glimpse of what family gatherings could have been like if Sarah hadn't poisoned everything with her jealousy. My mother-in-law came by later that week. She'd aged years in the past months, the stress of Sarah's actions weighing heavily on her. "I failed her somehow," she said, watching the twins sleep. "I must have. Normal people don't do what she did." "Mental illness doesn't mean you failed as a parent," my husband told her gently. "Sarah made choices. Bad ones. That's on her, not you." We spent the afternoon looking through old photo albums, pictures of Sarah as a child, smiling and seemingly normal. My mother-in-law pointed out moments she now recognized as warning signs. Sarah's rage when she didn't win a game, her manipulation of younger cousins, the mysterious illness of a classmate who'd struck her for class president. "I always made excuses," my mother-in-law admitted. "Said she was competitive, driven. I never wanted to see what was really there." The criminal trial was set for 6 months out. Sarah's public defender was trying to build an insanity defense, but the prosecutor felt confident. The evidence was overwhelming, from Catherine's testimony to the journal entries to Sarah's own recorded confessions. We settled into a new routine: park visits without looking over our shoulders, doctor appointments without fear of tampering, family dinners where Sarah's name rarely came up. The twins grew bigger every day, their personalities emerging. Charlotte was the serious one, studying everything with intense focus. James was all smiles and giggles, charming everyone he met. They were perfect, and they were ours, and Sarah couldn't touch them from behind bars. The daycare center where Sarah had briefly worked sent us a letter. They were implementing new background check procedures because of what happened. They also offered us free childcare if we ever needed it, their way of apologizing for the security lapse. We declined politely. The twins would stay with family or trusted friends when needed. Trust was earned slowly these days. Catherine sent a final text. I'm moving. New job, new state. I need to start over where no one knows what I did. I'm sorry again. Take care of those babies. I didn't respond. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. 5 months into Sarah's incarceration, we got unexpected news. She was pregnant. Apparently, she'd been seeing someone before her arrest, and now faced giving birth in prison. Her husband was devastated. Those kids don't deserve another sibling born into this mess, he said. And who knows what she took while pregnant. She wasn't stable. The pregnancy added another layer of complexity to the trial. Her lawyer pushed harder for the insanity defense, arguing no sane woman would commit crimes while pregnant. The prosecutor countered that Sarah's calculated actions showed clear premeditation, not insanity. We attended every pre-trial hearing, sitting quietly in the back, bearing witness. Sarah grew larger and more disheveled with each appearance. She'd stare at us with naked hatred, her hands cuffed over her expanding belly. During one hearing, she exploded. "They stole my life," she screamed, pointing at us. "My babies, my family, everything! And now they sit there judging me!" The judge ordered her removed from the courtroom. As guards escorted her out, she turned back one more time. Charlotte and James were supposed to be mine. The courtroom was silent after her outburst. Even her lawyer looked defeated. A month before trial, Sarah went into labor. The baby, a girl, was born healthy despite everyone's fears. Sarah named her Emma. My hands shook when I heard. Even now, even after everything, she was trying to hurt me, using my name for her child conceived in chaos and born in custody. Child Services took baby Emma immediately. Sarah had no rights to her, given her current situation and charges. The baby went to foster care while the state decided on permanent placement. Sarah's husband considered taking her but ultimately decided against it. "My kids have been through enough," he explained. "I can't bring home their half-sister as a constant reminder of their mother's breakdown." The trial began on a cold February morning. Charlotte and James were 11 months old, walking and babbling their first words. We left them with my father-in-law and took our seats in the courtroom. Sarah entered in shackles, her postpartum body shrouded in an orange jumpsuit. She'd lost weight since giving birth, her face gaunt and hollow. She found us immediately in the gallery, her stare unwavering. Catherine testified first, detailing how Sarah had blackmailed her into switching my vitamins. She broke down crying during cross-examination, but stuck to her story. The pharmacy had already revoked her license. This testimony was part of her plea deal. Sarah's husband went next, presenting the journal and describing years of manipulative behavior he'd been blind to. He shared stories of Sarah's escalating cruelty toward family members, her obsession with control, her inability to accept any perceived slight. When it was my turn to testify, I spoke clearly and calmly about the stolen names, the poisoned vitamins, the systematic destruction of my life. I showed photos of the twins, healthy and thriving despite Sarah's attempts to prevent their existence. She wanted me to suffer, I said, meeting Sarah's gaze, because I had something she couldn't control, her brother's love and loyalty. Sarah's lawyer tried to paint me as vindictive, suggesting I'd orchestrated everything to steal Sarah's life. But the evidence spoke louder than his theories. The prosecution presented everything. The emails, the fake social media accounts, the doctored medical records, the harassment campaign. They played recordings of Sarah's threats and confessions. They showed the jury the unmarked pills she'd brought to her children's house. Sarah testified on her own behalf against her lawyer's advice. She rambled about conspiracies and betrayal, claiming I'd been planning to destroy her from the day I met her brother. She insisted the vitamins were meant to help me, that the names were coincidences, that everyone was lying. "I'm a good mother," she insisted, tears streaming down her face. "They took my babies away because they're jealous of what I had." The prosecutor's cross-examination was brutal. He walked her through each piece of evidence, forcing her to confront her own words and actions. Sarah's story changed with each question, contradictions piling up. Finally, he asked, "Did you or did you not tamper with Emma's prenatal vitamins?" Sarah was silent for a long moment. Then quietly, "She didn't deserve to be a mother." The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order while Sarah's lawyer put his head in his hands. She'd just confessed on the stand. Closing arguments were brief. The evidence was overwhelming, the confession damning. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours, guilty on all counts. Sarah showed no emotion as the verdict was read. She stared straight ahead, her face blank. The judge scheduled sentencing for the following month. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. We pushed past them without comment. There was nothing to say. Justice had been served, but it brought no joy. A family was shattered, children motherless, a baby girl named Emma growing up in foster care. The sentencing hearing was quieter. Sarah appeared medicated, her movements slow and deliberate. Character witnesses spoke on both sides. Her children didn't attend. The judge sentenced her to 15 years with possibility of parole in 7. She'd serve her time in a facility with a mental health program. It was more lenient than the prosecutor wanted, but harsher than her lawyer hoped. As guards led her away, Sarah turned one last time. "Take care of my Emma," she said softly. I didn't know if she meant me or the baby, maybe both, maybe neither. We drove home to our twins, who greeted us with smiles and outstretched arms. Charlotte had learned to say mama while we were gone. James demonstrated his new ability to stack blocks. That night, after the twins were asleep, my husband and I sat on our porch. The stars were bright, the air crisp. We didn't talk about the trial or Sarah or the years of pain. We just sat together, breathing in peace. 2 weeks later, we got a call from Child Services. Sarah's baby Emma needed a permanent placement. Would we consider adopting her? My husband and I looked at each other, then at our twins playing on the floor. Charlotte was trying to feed James a toy car while he giggled. They were so happy, so innocent. "We'll think about it," I told the social worker. That night, we talked for hours. Could we raise Sarah's child? Could we look at her every day and not see her mother? Could we deny an innocent baby a loving home because of who gave birth to her? In the end, Love 1. Baby Emma joined our family 3 months later. We kept her first name but gave her a new middle name, Hope. Sarah's children visited often. They adored all 3 babies, especially Faye, who took her role as eldest cousin seriously. Their father started dating a kind woman who treated the kids well. Healing was slow but happening. My mother-in-law found peace in being a grandmother. She doted on all the children equally, making up for lost time. She never mentioned Sarah unless asked, and even then only briefly. She's getting help, was all she'd say. That's what matters now. I returned to work when the twins turned 2. My boss welcomed me back with a promotion, acknowledging how professionally I'd handled an impossible situation. My coworkers threw a small party, complete with baby photos on my desk. Life settled into a new normal. 3 children under 3 was chaos, but beautiful chaos. Emma grew to look nothing like her biological mother, all bright smiles and gentle nature. The twins accepted her as their sister without question. We told them the truth in age-appropriate ways as they grew, about families being complicated, about mental illness, about choosing love over hate, about how sometimes people who should love you can't, but that doesn't mean you're unlovable. Catherine wrote once, a long letter of apology and updates on her new life. She was in therapy, working at a hospital, trying to make amends for her choices. I wrote back once, wishing her well. Some forgiveness takes time. Sarah's husband remarried when his youngest turned 10. The wedding was small but joyful. All 4 kids were in the wedding party, beaming with happiness. They'd found stability again. We received occasional updates about Sarah from her lawyer. She was taking her medication, attending therapy, working in the prison library. She'd found religion, then lost it, then found it again. She wrote letters to her children that her ex-husband saved unopened, waiting for them to decide if they wanted to read them someday. She never wrote to us. We were grateful for that. On the twins' 5th birthday, we threw a big party. All the cousins came, along with school friends and neighbors. Faye, now a teenager, helped organize games. Sarah's other children sang happy birthday with genuine joy. Baby Emma, now 3, tried to blow out her siblings' candles. Charlotte stopped her gently while James laughed. They were so patient with their little sister, protective and loving. My husband's grandmother, now 95, sat in her wheelchair beaming. She'd lived to see her family heal from the fractures Sarah had caused. She held baby Emma on her lap, whispering stories about the family's history, the good parts. That night, after cake and presents and too much excitement, we tucked 3 exhausted children into bed. Charlotte insisted on one more story. James wanted extra cuddles, and Emma needed her special blanket arranged just right. As I closed Emma's door, I thought about Sarah in her cell. Did she think about the children she'd lost through her own actions? Did she regret the path she'd chosen? Did she ever accept responsibility? I'd never know, and that was okay. Her journey was hers alone now. My husband found me in the hallway, pulling me into a hug. We'd survived the impossible and built something beautiful from the ashes. Our children were happy, healthy, loved. That was what mattered. The next morning brought the usual chaos. Spilled cereal, lost shoes, arguments over toys, normal family life. Charlotte helped Emma find her favorite dress while James fed the dog breakfast. They were good kids, kind kids, despite or perhaps because of their origin story. My phone buzzed with a text from Faye. Can I babysit this weekend? I want to practice for when I have kids someday. I smiled, typing back yes. The cycle of family continued, healthier now, built on truth and choice rather than manipulation and pain. Sarah had tried to destroy us with her jealousy and cruelty. Instead, she'd created a larger, stronger family united by love and resilience. Her biological children thrived without her poison. Her baby grew surrounded by the love she'd tried to deny others. And us? We had everything she'd wanted, not because we'd stolen it, but because we'd earned it through patience, perseverance, and the choice to love even when it hurt. The twins started kindergarten that fall. Charlotte organized her supplies with military precision, while James charmed his teacher within minutes. Emma watched them leave with tears, counting the days until she could join them. We stood at the bus stop, 3 parents waving goodbye. My husband squeezed my hand as the bus pulled away. We'd made it. Despite everything, we'd made it. That afternoon, while Emma napped, I finally opened the box I'd kept in our closet. Inside were the ultrasound photos of our lost babies, the ones whose names Sarah had stolen. I looked at each one, remembering the hope and heartbreak they represented. Then I added new photos. Charlotte, James, and Emma playing together. Life from loss, joy from sorrow, family from the ashes of another's destruction. I closed the box and put it away. The past was honored but not dwelt upon. The present demanded too much attention, too much love, too much life to waste time on what might have been. Downstairs, Emma was awake, calling for snacks. I headed down to meet her, ready for whatever came next. We'd survived Sarah's worst. Everything else was just life. Messy, beautiful, ordinary life, and that was more than enough. When my little sister got pregnant at 14, my parents made me wear a fake belly and pretend the baby was mine. When I told them she needed a doctor, they said, "The only thing dying here is your selfishness. Put on the belly." I didn't argue, I just looked at her. That was almost 2 years ago. Yesterday, I got a thank you card from her high school graduation, signed with 2 names. What's the worst lie your family made you tell? When my 14-year-old sister Stella got pregnant, my parents forced me to wear a fake belly and pretend the baby was mine, because they said her future mattered more than mine ever would. My parents had built their entire identity around being the perfect family with 2 accomplished daughters headed for Ivy League schools. Mom ran the church youth group while Dad served as deacon, and they paraded my perfect sister Stella around at every congregation event. When Stella came home from church camp sobbing and pregnant, I watched my parents' carefully constructed world shatter before they decided to rebuild it on my back. They called me into Stella's room where she lay curled up, looking so young it made my chest hurt. "You're 17, and you already dress like a war," Mom said, stroking Stella's hair while the kids shook with tears. "But Stella's only 14 with her whole future ahead of her. You're going to wear this belly and tell everyone you're pregnant." She pulled out the foam padding and I stared at my little sister, remembering how I'd taught her to ride a bike and felt fury battle with protectiveness. She needs a doctor, I said. She's 14 and pregnant. She could die. Dad's face went cold. The only thing dying here is your selfishness. Put on the belly. Stella whispered, I'm sorry, but wouldn't meet my eyes. I tried reasoning first, suggesting we could say Stella was sick and needed homeschooling while I finished my senior year. Dad responded by destroying my laptop with my college essays and scholarship applications and said teen moms don't need those. Next, I went to my school counselor, but when I started explaining, Mom had already called ahead claiming I was pregnant and in denial. The counselor offered me prenatal vitamins and adoption pamphlets. I wrote an anonymous tip to Child Services about a 14-year-old being denied medical care, but Mom intercepted it and locked me in my room for 3 days until I promised to stop making trouble. The padding grew heavier as they adjusted it weekly to match Stella's real progression. I snuck into Stella's room one night and found her crying, terrified about giving birth. We could run away together, I whispered, holding her. Get you real help, but she just sobbed harder. Mom says if anyone finds out about what he did to me, they'll say I wanted it. The father was a 23-year-old camp counselor who'd groomed and raped my little sister, and now our parents were holding both of us hostage rather than bring him to justice. I took photos of Stella's real belly while she slept, planning to take them to the police, but Dad caught me. He didn't yell. Instead, he drove me to the roughest part of town at 2 a.m. and left me there. Walk home, he said. Think about how much worse things can get for girls who don't listen. It took me 4 hours in the dark, terrified and alone, clutching my fake belly like a teddy bear. After that night, I knew my next plan had to be smarter. I contacted a cousin who'd escaped our family years ago and begged for help. She agreed to drive down and get both Stella and me during the birth when our parents would be distracted. For weeks, I kept her updated, sending her money so she could help me and Stella get an apartment, and promised Stella we'd keep her baby together somewhere safe. When she went into labor, Dad drove and Mom coached Stella through contractions in the back seat, and I texted my cousin the hospital name. But we arrived to find my cousin already there, sitting with my parents' pastor. Your mom called me last week, my cousin said without meeting my eyes. She reminded me about my own mistakes at 17. I think you girls need your parents' wisdom. The betrayal felt like drowning. My parents smirked at me as they watched my last hope get crushed. Stella delivered a healthy girl despite her age, and my parents made her sign papers putting her up for adoption, without even letting Stella hold her. Stella was too weak from blood loss to even understand what was happening until it was too late. The next morning, she sobbed when she realized her baby was gone forever. I named her Grace, she told me, her body shaking. My parents forced me to pretend the baby I'd supposedly delivered had been stillborn because they didn't want the adoption gossip. I wore black and accepted casseroles from church ladies while Stella recovered alone and hidden away. The town treated me like broken glass, whispering about the teenage mother who'd lost her child as punishment for her sins. I moved through the days like a ghost, working at a grocery store where customers either avoided my eyes or stared with pity. Every night I heard Stella crying through the walls, mourning the daughter she'd never hold again. I started community college in January, driving an hour each way so I could escape my family without abandoning Stella. She went back to school too, thinner but maintaining her perfect grades while I bagged groceries until midnight to afford textbooks. We barely spoke anymore because looking at each other meant remembering Grace. Then in March, Stella started throwing up at breakfast. Mom found the pregnancy test in her trash and called me home from work. The counselor had threatened her, saying he'd expose the truth behind her pregnancy unless she met with him, and then he forced himself on her again. So you'll put the belly back on, Dad said, like we were discussing weather. Tell everyone you got pregnant again. Stupid girls do that all the time. I stared at them. These people who would protect a predator to save their reputation and their twisted vision of Stella's unspoiled future. I refused. Mom said, then we'll tell everyone you forced Stella to lie about being raped because you were jealous. Who will they believe? The godly parents or the slutty teen mom? I looked at my parents, these monsters who'd sacrifice both their daughters to protect their image, and something inside me finally snapped. Not into pieces, but into place, like a lock clicking open. I walked to the kitchen and grabbed Mom's phone from the counter. She lunged for it, but I held it high, scrolling through her contacts. Dad moved toward me, but I backed against the wall, finding what I needed. Pastor Williams' number. I started typing a text while they shouted threats. Mom grabbed my wrist and twisted until I dropped the phone. It shattered on the tile floor. Dad dragged me to my room and shoved me inside, locking the door from the outside. Through the walls, I heard Stella crying, begging them to let me out. For 3 days, they kept me locked up, sliding food under the door. I used the time to plan. They thought breaking me down would make me comply, but each hour alone just hardened my resolve. I scratched notes on paper, mapping out every person who might help, every possible escape route. When they finally let me out, I emerged calmer than they expected. I nodded when Mom handed me the foam belly. I strapped it on without argument. Dad smiled, satisfied that I'd learned my lesson. They had no idea I was done being their victim. At work that night, I cornered my manager Jess in the break room. She'd always been kind to me, bringing me leftover soup when I looked tired. I pulled up my shirt to show the fake belly, then pulled it off completely. Her eyes widened as I explained everything in rushed whispers. Jess drove me home at the end of my shift, but when we arrived, Mom stood on the porch with 2 church elders. They'd anticipated this move too. Jess looked between us all, confused and overwhelmed. The elders spoke softly about troubled teens and rebellion. Mom cried perfectly on cue. Jess left without me, shooting worried glances over her shoulder. The next morning, Mom made me wear the belly to church. I sat through service feeling the weight of every stare, every whispered prayer for the poor girl who couldn't stop sinning. Stella sat 3 rows ahead, shoulders hunched, looking smaller than ever. After church, I found Stella in the bathroom, throwing up again. Not from morning sickness this time, but from pure anxiety. I held her hair back and we didn't speak. We didn't need to. I saw the same desperation in her eyes that burned in mine. That week, I tried everything. I called the school counselor from a payphone, but she said she'd already heard about my second pregnancy and offered more adoption pamphlets. I walked to the police station during my lunch break, but the officer at the desk was Dad's golf buddy. He called Dad before I could even file a report. Each failed attempt taught me something. My parents had spent years building their network, their reputation. Everyone saw them as pillars of the community, but that same network had cracks, people they'd wronged or overlooked. I remembered Mrs. Burt from down the street, whose daughter had mysteriously left for boarding school last year. I knocked on her door one evening when my parents thought I was at work. She let me in without questions, poured tea, and listened. When I finished, she sat quietly for a long moment. Mrs. Burt couldn't help directly, she explained. Her own family's secrets kept her bound, but she told me about her nephew Pablo, a social worker in the next county. She wrote his number on a napkin and pressed it into my hand. Sometimes, she said carefully, help comes from unexpected places. I hid the number in my shoe and went home. Dad checked my pockets now, my phone, my room, but he never checked my shoes. Small victories mattered when you had nothing else. At school, I started documenting everything. Not obviously, but in ways that looked like normal homework. English essays about family dynamics, health class projects about teen pregnancy. Each assignment contained carefully worded truths that might someday matter. Stella grew sicker each day. The counselor had threatened her again, demanding another meeting. What exactly is happening with this counselor that the parents won't report? They're going through all this trouble with fake bellies and lies, but they're letting this man keep hurting Stella? She refused to eat, terrified of gaining weight and showing. Mom forced nutrition shakes down her throat while Dad held her arms. I watched from the doorway, memorizing their cruelty for the day I could make them pay. One night, I snuck into Stella's room and found her writing what looked like goodbye letters. I grabbed them, read the first line, and my blood went cold. She was planning to hurt herself rather than go through this again. I held her while she sobbed, promising her we'd find a way out. I just needed more time. The next day, I called Pablo from the grocery store phone during my break. His voice was professional but kind. I explained everything in under 5 minutes, knowing my manager would notice if I took too long. Pablo listened, asked careful questions, then said he'd need documentation. Real evidence, not just words. I started taking pictures with a disposable camera I bought with tip money. Stella's growing belly when she changed. The adoption papers they'd forced her to sign, which I found in Mom's desk. The fake belly they made me wear. Each photo was a risk, but also a piece of ammunition. Dad must have sensed something shifting because he started driving me to and from work, eliminating my freedom of movement. Mom began sitting in my room while I did homework, reading her Bible and watching me with cold eyes. They were tightening the net, but they didn't know I'd already started cutting holes in it. I kept Pablo's number hidden in my shoe for a week, waiting for the right moment. Mom's surveillance grew more intense. She installed a baby monitor in my room, claiming she needed to make sure I wasn't harming the baby. The irony burned as I strapped on the fake belly each morning while Stella's real one grew hidden beneath baggy sweatshirts. The disposable camera became my lifeline. I photographed everything I could reach. Bank statements showing large cash withdrawals around the time of Grace's adoption. The camp counselor's photo from the church bulletin board that Mom kept in her desk drawer. Medical bills addressed to Stella that Mom thought she'd hidden well enough. Each click of the shutter felt like loading bullets into a GN I'd eventually fire. Work became my only escape, but even that freedom shrank. Dad started showing up randomly during my shifts, browsing the aisles while keeping me in sight. My coworkers noticed his presence, whispering about the overprotective father of a pregnant teen. I smiled and played the part while rage simmered beneath a foam padding. One evening, a new customer came through my checkout line, Mrs. Dubwa from church, whose own daughter had left town suddenly 2 years ago. She studied my fake belly with knowing eyes, then slipped a folded paper between the groceries. I pocketed it quickly. Later in the bathroom, I read her message. I know what they're doing. Call me when you're ready. I memorized her number and flushed the paper. Another ally, another crack in my parents' perfect facade. But I needed more than sympathy. I needed proof they couldn't deny or explain away. Stella's condition worsened daily. She fainted during dinner one night, hitting her head on the table edge. Blood trickled from the wound while Mom dabbed at it with a dishcloth, insisting she just needed rest. I tried to call an ambulance, but Dad ripped the phone from the wall. They carried Stella to her room and locked us both inside. I cleaned her wound with tissues and water from the bathroom tap, whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep. Her skin felt too hot, her breathing too shallow. The camp counselor had done more than assault her again. He'd broken something inside her that our parents refused to see. The next morning, Mom unlocked the door wearing her church smile. She handed me prenatal vitamins and reminded me about my doctor's appointment that afternoon. The appointment where I'd have to convince a medical professional that my foam belly contained a real baby. The thought made me sick. At the clinic, I sat in the waiting room surrounded by actual pregnant women. Mom chatted with them about morning sickness and baby names while I sweated beneath the padding. When the nurse called my name, Mom stood to follow. The nurse shook her head, citing privacy policies. Mom's jaw tightened, but she sat back down. In the examination room, I pulled off the fake belly and showed the nurse my flat stomach. She stared, confused as I rapid-fired the truth. Her expression shifted from bewilderment to horror. She promised to help, to call someone, to fix this. But when we emerged, Mom had already spoken to the doctor. They discussed my psychological issues and pregnancy denial, while the nurse stood frozen, outmaneuvered by my mother's preparation. The ride home was silent. Mom had won another round, but I'd seen something in that nurse's eyes. Not everyone believed their lies. The cracks were spreading. That night, I heard Stella crying again. Not her usual quiet sobs, but sharp, pained sounds. I picked a lock with a hairpin I'd been practicing with and found her curled on the floor, blood staining her pajama pants. This time I didn't hesitate. I ran to the kitchen and grabbed Dad's car keys from the hook. Mom appeared in the doorway as I helped Stella stand. Dad emerged from their bedroom, blocking our path to the front door. They demanded I put Stella back in her room, that they'd handle it in the morning. I looked at my sister's gray face, felt her weight against me, and made my choice. I drove Dad's shoulder into the wall and pushed past him. Mom grabbed Stella's other arm, trying to pull her back. Stella screamed, a sound that that should have broken any mother's heart. Instead, Mom just pulled harder. I shoved her away and half-carried Stella to the car. Dad caught up as I fumbled with the keys. He grabbed my wrist, twisting until I dropped them. Stella collapsed against the car door, breathing in short gasps. In that moment, watching my father choose his reputation over his daughter's life, something cold and clear crystallized inside me. I kneed him in the groin. He doubled over, gasping. I snatched the keys and shoved Stella into the passenger seat. Mom ran toward us, but I'd already started the engine. We peeled out of the driveway, leaving them standing in the headlights. The hospital emergency room was bright and busy. I carried Stella inside, shouting for help. Nurses surrounded us, whisking her away on a gurney. I tried to follow, but security stopped me. I wasn't family, they said. The irony might have been funny if Stella wasn't dying. I called Pablo from the hospital payphone. This time I didn't whisper or rush. I told him everything while watching the emergency room doors. He said he'd come immediately, that this changed everything. I gave him the hospital name and collapsed in a waiting room chair. Mom and Dad arrived 20 minutes later. They spoke to the receptionist in calm voices, playing the concerned parents perfectly. When they approached me, Mom's hand closed around my arm like a vice. They tried to force me to leave, to come home where we could discuss this as a family. Security intervened when I started screaming. Not words, just sound. Pure rage and fear pouring out of my throat. They separated us, making my parents sit on the opposite side of the waiting room. Dad's eyes promised retribution. Mom clutched her purse, no doubt planning her next move. Pablo arrived before they could try again. He wore an official badge and spoke with quiet authority. My parents' faces went pale as he introduced himself. He'd brought a colleague, a woman who specialized in cases like ours. They separated us for interviews. I handed over the disposable camera, showed them the photos on my phone, recited dates and incidents I'd memorized. The woman took notes without judgment, asking careful questions that drew out details I hadn't realized mattered. Meanwhile, Pablo spoke with my parents, his calm voice carrying across the waiting room. A doctor emerged after 2 hours. Stella was stable but needed surgery. The pregnancy had been ectopic, growing in the wrong place. Without immediate treatment, she would have died. The doctor's words hung in the air like an accusation. Mom tried to spin it, claiming they'd been about to bring Stella in themselves. The doctor's expression suggested she'd heard such lies before. She asked pointed questions about prenatal care, about why a 14-year-old's pregnancy had progressed so far without medical attention. Dad's answers grew increasingly fumbled. Pablo's colleague pulled me aside. They'd need to place Stella in protective custody while investigating. She asked if I had somewhere safe to stay. I thought of Mrs. Dubwa's knowing eyes, of Mrs. Burt's quiet tea ceremony. I had options now. The surgery took 3 more hours. I dozed in the uncomfortable chair, jolting awake whenever footsteps approached. My parents had been escorted to a separate waiting area after Dad tried to corner me in the bathroom. Their kingdom was crumbling, brick by brick. When Stella woke up, I was there. Her eyes focused slowly, confused by the hospital room. I held her hand and explained what happened, watching tears slide down her cheeks. The baby was gone. The counselor's second assault had nearly culled her, but she was alive, and for now, that was enough. Pablo returned with paperwork, emergency custody orders, investigations into medical neglect, mandated reporting about the counselor. The legal machinery ground into motion, slow but inexorable. My parents could no longer stop it with phone calls and tears. They tried, of course. Mom called her church friends, spinning tales of rebellious daughters and social workers overstepping bounds. But Mrs. Dubwa had been busy too. She'd spoken with other mothers, ones whose daughters had also left suddenly. The pattern was becoming clear. Dad attempted a different approach. He showed up at my work with my belongings, playing the heartbroken father just wanting his daughter home. The fake belly meeting the real medical staff is comedy gold, until you remember there's a dying kid involved. Nothing like trying to convince a nurse your foam padding needs prenatal care while your sister bleeds out at home. Jess, my manager, stood beside me as I refused. He left the boxes by the door, but not before slipping an envelope into my hand. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a note, "For your silence." I photocopied both and gave the originals to Pablo. More evidence, more nails in their coffin. The investigation expanded, reaching into corners my parents had thought secure. The church board started asking questions. The youth group parents demanded answers. Stella spent a week in the hospital. I split my time between her room and work, sleeping on waiting room chairs and showering in the employee bathroom. My fake pregnancy became real exhaustion, dark circles replacing foam padding. But for the first time in months, I could breathe. The camp counselor was arrested on a Tuesday. I wasn't there, but Mrs. Dubwa called to tell me. He'd been working at another church camp 2 counties over. They found evidence of other victims. My stomach turned, thinking of other Stellas suffering in silence. Mom tried one last manipulation. She showed up at the hospital with Stella's favorite stuffed animal and tears streaming down her face. She begged Stella to come home, promised things would be different. Stella looked at me, then at the teddy bear, then at our mother. She took the bear and asked Mom to leave. The foster family Pablo found specialized in cases like ours. Mrs. Yamamoto had been a nurse before becoming a foster parent. Her house smelled like green tea and safety. Stella got the pink room she'd always wanted. I got a lock on my door that only I controlled. We testified in separate rooms, Stella via video link because seeing him made her vomit. I sat in the witness chair and spoke every truth they'd tried to bury. The prosecutor had photos from my disposable camera blown up as exhibits. Mom's forged medical documents, Dad's threatening texts, the fake belly, which I'd kept as evidence. Our parents sat in the gallery, shrinking with each revelation. Their church friends filled the other seats, but support had shifted. Mrs. Dubwa sat behind us. Mrs. Burt sent flowers. Even Jess came on her day off, wearing her best dress. The counselor got 15 years. Not enough, but something. He'd serve at least 10 before parole. Other charges from other victims would keep him longer. Stella cried when they read the verdict. Good tears this time. The case against our parents moved slower. Child endangerment, medical neglect, conspiracy charges that made Dad hire an expensive lawyer. Their savings drained as their reputation crumbled. The church quietly removed them from leadership positions. Mom's youth group disbanded. I started college that fall, a year late but determined. The scholarship scholarship I'd thought lost had been held by a sympathetic administrator who'd heard whispers of my situation. Stella entered therapy, real help instead of prayer circles. She painted Grace's name on a canvas that hung in her new pink room. We saw our parents at the grocery store sometimes. They'd aged years and months, their perfect facades cracked beyond repair. Mom once tried to approach us, but the restraining order stopped her at 50 feet. Dad just stared, perhaps finally understanding what he'd lost. Mrs. Yamamoto helped us navigate the legal system. Emancipation for me at 18. Permanent guardianship for Stella. Victim compensation funds for therapy and education. Piece by piece, we rebuilt what they'd tried to destroy. The town's whispers changed. No longer about the teen mom who'd lost her baby, but about the girl who'd saved her sister. About parents who'd valued image over children. About secrets that couldn't stay buried forever. The truth, messy and painful, proved stronger than their perfect lies. Stella started high school at a different district. No one there knew our story unless she chose to tell them. She joined the art club and made friends who knew her as more than a victim. On Grace's birthday, we released balloons at the park, watching them disappear into clouds. I worked fewer hours, focused on pre-med courses. Helping Stella through her medical crisis had shown me a path forward. Jess wrote recommendation letters that spoke of strength under pressure. Pablo checked in monthly, proud of our progress. The investigation uncovered more than we'd known. Financial fraud related to the adoption. Forged documents at the church. A pattern of covering for the counselor that reached back years. Our parents faced charges that multiplied like cancer cells, eating away at their constructed life. Some nights, Stella still cried for Grace. I held her through the grief, understanding that some wounds never fully heal. But she smiled more too. Painted vibrant canvases, talked about becoming an art therapist. She wanted to help other girls who'd been silenced. Mom sent letters we didn't open. Dad tried going through lawyers, then relatives, then church friends. Each attempt met the same response: silence. We'd given them years of our voices. Now they got nothing. The final custody hearing approached like a storm system. Our parents' lawyer would argue for reunification. Pablo warned us to prepare for emotional manipulation, for promises of change. But Stella and I had learned to weather storms. We gathered evidence of our new life. Stella's improved grades, my college acceptance, photos of birthday parties and normal teenage moments, testimonials from teachers and counselors who'd watched us heal, proof that we'd thrived without them. The hearing was set for a Thursday. We'd face them one last time, speak our truths to a judge who'd decide our future. But whatever happened, we'd already won the important battle. We'd survived. We'd protected each other. We'd refused to live their lies. Wednesday night, Stella painted bold strokes of color that formed into wings. Not angel wings, but bird wings, strong enough to fly away. She signed it with her name and Grace's, intertwined like sisters who'd never meet but would always be connected. I packed our documents, the photos, the evidence of everything we'd overcome. Tomorrow would bring either freedom or another fight. But tonight, we ate takeout and watched movies. Two sisters who'd learned that family meant choosing each other over everything else. The morning would come soon enough. For now, we had this: truth, survival, and the knowledge that we'd already struck the worst they could do. The rest was just paperwork. Thursday morning arrived with gray skies that matched my mood. I dressed carefully, choosing clothes that made me look responsible but not trying too hard. Stella wore the blue dress Mrs. Yamamoto had bought her for special occasions. We ate breakfast in silence, both pushing eggs around our plates. Mrs. Yamamoto drove us to the courthouse, her steady presence calming my racing heart. Pablo met us in the parking lot with his colleague and a thick folder of documentation. He reviewed our testimony one last time, reminding us to stick to facts and avoid emotional outbursts. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Wood paneling and fluorescent lights made everything look washed out. Our parents sat at a table with their lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who kept checking his phone. Mom wore her church dress, the one with tiny flowers that made her look harmless. Dad had shaved and wore his deacon tie. The judge entered and we all stood. She was younger than I'd expected, with kind eyes that surveyed the room carefully. Pablo had said she specialized in family cases, that she'd seen situations like ours before. I hoped that was true. Our parents' lawyer went first, painting a picture of a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. He talked about loving parents who'd made mistakes under stress, about teenage rebellion and outside influences, about the importance of keeping families together. Each word felt like sandpaper on my skin. When Pablo stood to present our case, he started with the photos: the fake belly, medical records showing Stella's age during both pregnancies, the adoption papers signed under duress, bank statements, text messages, the evidence mounted like a wall between us and our parents. I testified first, keeping my voice steady as I recounted each incident. The lawyer tried to twist my words, suggesting I'd been jealous of Stella, that I'd exaggerated for attention. I stuck to facts, describing the night Dad left me in the dangerous neighborhood, the locked doors, the forced padding. Stella testified via video link from another room. Her voice shook as she described the camp counselor, the threats, the second pregnancy. She had to stop twice to compose herself. The judge's expression grew harder with each detail. During a recess, I saw Mom in the bathroom. She stood at the sink, gripping the edge like it might hold her upright. Her reflection looked hollow, aged. She saw me in the mirror but said nothing. We existed in that silence for a moment before I left. The afternoon brought character witnesses. Mrs. Dubwa described her suspicions, the pattern she'd noticed. Jess talked about my work ethic despite everything. Teachers from Stella's new school discussed her progress. Each testimony added another brick to our foundation. Our parents' witnesses were fewer. Church members who spoke in generalities about their good character. People who'd known them for years but had never seen inside our home. Their words rang hollow against the evidence. The judge called a final recess before her decision. We waited in a small room that smelled like old coffee and anxiety. Stella drew patterns on a legal pad while I paced. Pablo sat quietly, having done all he could. When we returned, the judge spoke for 20 minutes. She outlined the evidence, the testimonies, the legal standards. She talked about the best interests of children, about patterns of abuse and control, about parents who'd chosen reputation over their daughter's well-being. The decision was comprehensive. Pablo's keeping evidence of a $5,000 bribe makes me wonder why these parents think money fixes everything when there's already an investigation happening. The counselor getting arrested at another church camp suggests someone knew and just moved him around instead of stopping him. Permanent guardianship to Mrs. Yamamoto until I turned 18, then to me for Stella. Supervised visitation only, if we chose to allow it. Continued therapy mandated for all parties. The restraining order would remain in place. Our parents' lawyer immediately mentioned appeal. The judge cut him off, stating the evidence was overwhelming. She looked directly at our parents and said the court had shown more mercy than they'd shown their daughters. Mom broke down then, not her practiced tears, but raw, ugly sobs. Dad put his arm around her, but his face stayed blank. They looked smaller somehow, like all their power had evaporated under the courtroom lights. We left through a different exit to avoid them. In the car, Stella reached for my hand. Neither of us spoke. There was nothing to say that our intertwined fingers didn't already communicate. That evening, Mrs. Yamamoto made a special dinner. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and garlic bread, but it felt like a feast. We ate on the back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of hope. Stella showed me a new painting she'd been working on. Two birds on a wire, leaning into each other against the wind. She'd used every color in her palette, creating something beautiful from chaos. I recognized us in those birds. The next few days passed in a blur of normalcy that felt foreign. No locked doors, no fake bellies, no threats, just regular life things like homework and chores and arguing over TV shows. Stella laughed at something stupid on her phone, and the sound made me cry. I returned to work, where Jess had decorated my register with a small sign that said, "Welcome back." Customers treated me like any other cashier, not knowing the girl scanning their groceries had just won the fight of her life. Pablo called to check in, reminding us about resources available, support groups we could join when ready, legal aid if our parents violated the order, numbers to call if we needed anything. We filed it all away, hoping never to need it. One afternoon, I found Stella in her room holding the teddy bear Mom had brought to the hospital. She wasn't crying, just staring at it like it might hold answers. I sat beside her and we talked about complicated feelings, about loving people who'd hurt us, about moving forward without forgetting. School became my refuge again. My professors didn't know my story, just saw a student hungry to learn. I threw myself into pre-med studies with new purpose. Every anatomy lesson reminded me of Stella in that hospital bed, strengthening my resolve. Stella joined the school play, surprising everyone including herself. She played a minor character, but threw herself into rehearsals. On opening night, Mrs. Yamamoto and I sat in the audience, cheering too loudly when she delivered her 3 lines perfectly. We established new traditions: Sunday morning pancakes instead of church, movie nights where we picked films our parents would have banned, small rebellions that felt like reclaiming ourselves. The grocery store where I worked hired 2 new people, letting me reduce my hours to focus on school. I trained them carefully, remembering how work had been my only escape. You never knew who might need that job like a lifeline. Stella's therapy sessions started showing progress. She came home lighter some days, like she'd set down invisible weights. She started talking about the future again, about art school possibilities, about becoming someone who helped kids like her. We got a letter from the lawyer handling the criminal case against the camp counselor. More victims had come forward. His sentence would likely increase. Stella read it once, then asked me to file it away. She was done letting him take up space in her head. Mrs. Yamamoto taught us to cook her grandmother's recipes. We spent evenings in the kitchen, chopping vegetables and learning about her childhood in Japan. She shared her own story of leaving a difficult family situation, showing us that survival could lead to joy. I started volunteering at the hospital on weekends, shadowing nurses and doctors. One recognized me from Stella's emergency visit. She said nothing but squeezed my shoulder in understanding. The medical world was full of people who'd seen the worst and still chose to help. Stella's grades improved beyond what they'd been even before everything happened. Her art teacher recommended her for a summer program at the local college. She applied without telling me, wanting to surprise me with the acceptance letter. We ran into kids from our old church sometimes. Some avoided us, others asked careful questions. A few admitted they'd suspected something was wrong but hadn't known what to do. We didn't blame them. Speaking up was harder than staying silent. The restraining order meant we could shop without fear, walk through town without looking over our shoulders. Freedom felt strange at first, like wearing new shoes that hadn't been broken in yet, but each day it fit a little better. Stella painted Grace's portrait from memory on what would have been her first birthday. We framed it and hung it in her room, a reminder that love persists even through loss. Some nights I still heard her crying, but now I could go to her, hold her, remind her she wasn't alone. My college advisor helped me apply for additional scholarships. My essay about overcoming adversity won a small grant that covered textbooks for a year. I wrote about resilience without mentioning specifics, protecting our privacy while sharing our strength. Pablo sent updates about our parents' legal troubles. Multiple charges were proceeding. Their lawyer kept filing motions that judges kept denying. Their money dwindled as their reputation crumbled further. Natural consequences playing out exactly as they should. We decided to get a cat, something our parents had always forbidden. Stella picked an orange tabby from the shelter who purred like a motorboat. She named him Sunny, and he slept on her bed every night, a warm presence that eased nightmares. Spring arrived with possibility. I got accepted to the pre-med program at the state university. Stella's art was selected for a student showcase. Mrs. Yamamoto's garden bloomed with vegetables we'd planted together. Life grew in spaces that had once held only pain. On a random Tuesday, Stella hugged me in the kitchen for no reason. We stood there, 2 sisters who'd survived the worst, holding each other in the safety we'd fought to create. No words needed, just the rhythm of breathing in sync, hearts beating with hard-won peace. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but ours to shape. We'd build it day by day, choice by choice, far from the lies that once defined us. Together, we'd learned that family wasn't about blood or obligation. It was about choosing each other, again and again, especially when the world tried to tear you apart. Alright, time to close the book on this one. Appreciate you hanging out while I threw in my 2 cents here and there. Hopefully a few of them were clever enough to stick. Like the video, it helps more than you think.
বাংলাদেশের কোনো কুকিং রিয়েলিটি শোতে এই চ্যালেঞ্জটি আজ পর্যন্ত হয়নি।
আমাদের চ্যালেঞ্জটা হচ্ছে এটা খুব হেলদি হতে হবে।
একটা ডিশ বানাবেন and it has to be somewhere between 500 to 600 calories. এর থেকে কমও না বেশিও না।
আজকের যে চ্যালেঞ্জটি হতে যাচ্ছে আমার ধারণা কোনো কুকিং রিয়েলিটি শো বা বাংলাদেশের কোনো কুকিং রিয়েলিটি শোতে এই চ্যালেঞ্জটি আজ পর্যন্ত হয়নি।
ও মাই গড,
আজকের যে থিম এর জন্য একদম অ্যাপ্রোপ্রিয়েট পারসন যে আমাদের একজন গেস্ট আছেন, গেস্ট বিচারক, তাকে আমি আমন্ত্রণ জানাতে চাই। নিউট্রিশনিস্ট নুসরাত দীপা, প্লিজ
ওয়েলকাম। থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ ফর কামিং। কেমন লাগছে আমাদের এই আয়োজনে এসে?
প্রথমে আপনাকে থ্যাংক ইউ জানাচ্ছি, ভীষণ ভালো লাগছে এবং ইটস অ্যান অনার টু বি হিয়ার অ্যাজ এ গেস্ট জাজ বিকজ আমার সঙ্গে যারা রয়েছে জাজেস হিসেবে সবাইকে থ্যাংক ইউ দিচ্ছি। ভীষণ ভালো লাগছে ডেফিনেটলি, এবং কংগ্রাচুলেশনস আওয়ার টপ 8 কন্টেস্টেন্টস। আপনাদের জন্য অনেক অনেক শুভকামনা রইল। সেই সাথে আমি সবসময় অ্যাজ এ ক্লিনিক্যাল ডায়েটিশিয়ান আমি কিন্তু সবসময় বলি যে শুধু রান্না করলেই চলবে না, স্বাদ এবং স্বাস্থ্য দুটোর কম্বিনেশন থাকতে হবে। সো আজকের রান্নায় আমাদের এই এক্সপেকটেশনটা কিন্তু অনেক বেশি থাকবে আপনাদের কাছ থেকে। সো উইশ ইউ অল দ্য বেস্ট।
এবারে বিজ্ঞ বিচারক, আজকের চ্যালেঞ্জ কি সেটা জানার জন্য অধীর আগ্রহে অপেক্ষা করছি আমরা প্রত্যেকে।
আমাদের আজকের চ্যালেঞ্জটা আমাদের মডার্ন হ্যাবিটস, কালচার, ট্রেন্ড অ্যান্ড ভাইবসের সাথে অনেক রিলেটেড, স্পেশালি ফর জেন জি অ্যান্ড মিলেনিয়াল।
একটু খোলাসা করেই বলছি, যখন গভীর রাত হয়, গভীর রাত হয়ে আমরা সবাই যে যার ব্যস্ত সময় কাটিয়ে ক্লান্ত হয়ে বাড়িতে ফিরি, যে যার কাজ অনুযায়ী কেউ কন্টেন্ট ক্রিয়েটর হতে পারে, কেউ অনেক গেম খেলে, এরকম হতে পারে, কেউ হয়তো বা আমরা রিল্যাক্স হওয়ার জন্য কিছু অ্যাক্টিভিটি ছেড়ে একটু রিল্যাক্স হওয়ার চেষ্টা করি, আর তখনই ওই সময়টাতেই ওই জিনিসটা আসে।
আশ্চর্য, কে আসে?
যখনই আমি আমার ল্যাপটপে কাজ করতে থাকি ওর যে কোনো ধরনের টিভি সিরিজ দেখতে থাকি, একটা সার্টেন টাইমে একটা ইচ্ছা আসে, একটা ক্রেভিং আসে। আই লুক ফর সামথিং কমফোর্টিং, স্যাটিসফাইং, যেটা দেখে এবং খেতে ভালো লাগবে। মিডনাইট ক্রেভিং আসে আমার। অ্যান্ড আজকের আমাদের চ্যালেঞ্জটা মিডনাইট ক্রেভিং।
ওয়াও!
সো আজকে মিডনাইট ক্রেভিং এর ফুড ক্রিয়েট করতে হবে।
সো পার্টিসিপেন্টস, এমন কিছু রেসিপি আজকে আমরা টপ 8 পার্টিসিপেন্টসের কাছ থেকে পাবো, যেটা আমাদের মিডনাইট ক্রেভিং হলেও সেটা আমাদের শরীরটাকে সুস্থ রাখবে।
সেই জন্যই আজকে আমাদের মাঝে আছেন আমাদের গেস্ট জাজ।
আমাদের আজকের টাস্কের কথা তো সবাই নিশ্চয়ই জেনেছেন যে এটা মিডনাইট ক্রেভিংয়ের জন্য যে ফুডসটা আমরা খুব ক্রেভ ফিল করি, এটা মুভি দেখতে দেখতেই হোক, সারাদিন কাজের পরে হোক, এটা কিন্তু খুব ইম্পর্ট্যান্ট একটা মিল। বাট আমাদের চ্যালেঞ্জটা হচ্ছে এটা খুব হেলদি হতে হবে।
পার্টিসিপেন্টস, আজকে আপনাদেরকে একটা ডিশ বানাতে হবে। প্লিজ কিপ ইন মাইন্ড মিডনাইট ক্রেভিং, ঠিক আছে? অ্যাপ্রোপ্রিয়েট টাস্কের জন্য যে রেসিপিটা সেটা সিলেক্ট করবেন, একটা ডিশ বানাবেন অ্যান্ড ইট হ্যাজ টু বি সামওয়্যার বিটুইন 500 to 600 ক্যালোরিজ। এর থেকে কমও না বেশিও না। কি রেসিপি আজকে তুই বানাচ্ছিস?
শেফ, আমি চিন্তা করছি আমি যেহেতু মিডনাইট আমি ফ্রুটস অ্যান্ড নাটস অথবা মানে সুইট কিছু খাই, সো আই ওয়াজ থিঙ্কিং যে ডিফারেন্ট কী করা যায়। আমি ভাবছিলাম যে জেলোটা যদি বের হয় তাহলে আমি একটা র্যাভিলো করবো, যদি ইন কেস এটা না হয় তাহলে আমি মুজে চলে গেলাম।
হ্যালো শেফ।
চলো তাহলে কি বানাচ্ছেন?
শেফ, আমি ক্রিম অফ ব্রকলি বানাচ্ছি আর এর সাথে গার্লিক বাটার টোস্ট দিচ্ছি।
কয়টা সার্ভিং করছেন?
4 সার্ভিং।
আসলে কি বানাচ্ছেন?
আমি আজকে ইতালিয়ান পাস্তা বানাচ্ছি। তো আমার এই সসটা রেডি হয়ে গেছে প্রায়, আর ওখানে আমার পাস্তা রেডি আছে। চিকেনটাই মাত্র দিলাম সসের ভিতরে, একটু কুক হলে পাস্তাটা জাস্ট অ্যাড করে দেবো তুমি।
সস কি ক্রিম বেসড?
হ্যাঁ, ক্রিম বেস সস করছি, একটু চিজ দেবো।
পাস্তা, চিজ, চিকেন, ক্রিম বেসড, ভেজিটেবলস 500 থেকে 600 ক্যালোরির ভিতরে হয়ে যাবে।
জি
গুড লাক।
ঠিক আছে, থ্যাংক ইউ শেফ।
সবাই কি অবস্থা? কি ভাই?
এই তো শেফ, আমি হচ্ছে একটা হ্যান্ডমেড পাস্তা করেছি। এটা হচ্ছে পার্পল ক্যাবেজ পাস্তা, আর সাথে আমি একটা চিকেন দিয়েছি প্রোটিন হিসেবে। এটার মধ্যে হচ্ছে অ্যাকচুয়ালি কার্ব, প্রোটিন, ভেজিটেবল সব কিছুই আছে।
আপনারা অলমোস্ট ডান।
হ্যাঁ স্যার,
একটা সার্ভিংই করছেন।
আমি একটার মধ্যেই প্রেজেন্ট করছি, যেন একটার থেকেই হচ্ছে 2400 বা 2200 ক্যালোরি ডিভাইড হতে পারে।
রশিন,
স্যার
কি রেসিপি আজকে তুই বানাচ্ছিস?
শেফ, আমি চিন্তা করছি আমি যেহেতু মিডনাইট আমি ফ্রুটস অ্যান্ড নাটস অথবা মানে সুইট কিছু খাই, সো আই ওয়াজ থিঙ্কিং যে ডিফারেন্ট কী করা যায়। আমি ভাবছিলাম যে জেলোটা যদি বের হয় তাহলে আমি একটা র্যাভিলো করবো, যদি ইন কেস এটা না হয় তাহলে আমি মুজে চলে গেলাম।
অনেক কিছুই তো দেখলাম, ইন্টারেস্টিং মনে হয়েছে। সাপাইতে একটা পার্পল ক্যাবেজ দিয়ে হ্যান্ডমেড পাস্তা বানিয়েছে।
একটি পোর্শন বেশি লাগছে।
পোর্শন বেশি বলতে হি মেড ইট ফর 4 জনের জন্য একসাথে সার্ভ করছে। ইটস পিপল 1:4, which is okay. তামান্না বানাচ্ছে হলো গিয়ে একটা ব্রকলি সিড, ক্রিম অফ ব্রকলি উইথ গার্লিক ব্রেড। আর মৌসুমি একটা পাস্তা করতেছে ক্রিম বেসড উইথ আ লট অফ চিজ। আমি জানি না, আমি শিওর না এটা কি 5 থেকে 600 ক্যালোরিজের ভিতরে হবে নাকি, ওটা ফাইন্ড আউট করতে হবে।
পার্টিসিপেন্টস, আর মাত্র 10 মিনিট বাকি আছে। আমি অনেকেই দেখছি প্লেটিং করছেন, হাতে সময় একদমই নেই। এর মাঝে কিন্তু কস্টিং করতে হবে এবং কিচেন ক্লিন করতে হবে। সো প্লিজ হারি আপ। পার্টিসিপেন্টস, আর মাত্র 5 মিনিটস বাকি আছে, অনলি 5 মিনিটস। প্লিজ আরো ফাস্ট করুন।
মাথা ঠান্ডা করে প্লেটিং করে ফেলেন। সাফায়াত কস্টিং যান। কস্টিং
কাউন্টডাউন দিচ্ছি। 10 9 8 7 6 5 4 3 2 1 0 আর টাইমস আপ।
হাটহাজারি মরিচের স্টাফিং দিয়েছি ভেতরে, চকলেট ময়েস্ট কাপকেক অ্যান্ড নাগা মরিচ দিয়ে চাট করেছি, কাটুরি চাট।
এখানকার ব্ল্যাক স্কার ফোল্ডার টপ স্কোরার হয়ে আপনি ডেটস নিয়ে বারবার কেন খেলছেন?
সরি ম্যাম।
বরিশালের নওশিন।
হেমাদাচ্ছি, এটা হচ্ছে ভুটানের ন্যাশনাল ডিশ। সাথে হচ্ছে আমি চাষির চিনিগুড়া চাল দিয়ে একটা রাইস করেছি, শুধু মানে ঘি অ্যাড করেছি। আর করেছি টাং টুইস্ট শ্রিম্প নাগা মরিচ দিয়ে, আর হাটহাজারি মরিচ দিয়ে ডিলাইট করেছি চকলেট নাটস অ্যান্ড ডেটস দিয়ে। আর একটা সস করেছি অরেঞ্জ সস, সাথে হচ্ছে হাটহাজারি মরিচ।
ভুটানের ডিশ বলছেন, নামটা বলেন।
হেমাদাচ্ছি।
ইমাদাচি। এটা টেস্টটা ভালো, এটা আপনি শিমলা মির্চ দিয়ে করেছেন।
জি।
আপনি এমন একটা চিলি চুজ করেছেন যেটা ঝাল নেই, সো চিজটা ফ্লেভারটা নিয়ে নিয়েছে পুরোটা। সো ইমাদাচি হয় অ্যাকচুয়ালি কোনো দেশের ন্যাশনাল ফুড যদি প্রেজেন্ট করতে চান, আপনাকে ওই রেসিপিটাই ফলো করতে হবে। আপনার নাগা মরিচের প্রন অনেক বেশি ঝাল, প্রনের টেস্ট বাকি সব টেস্ট ভুলে গেছি, আর অনেক টক। আরেকটা ভুল ডেজার্টের, হাটহাজারি মরিচ দিয়ে ডেজার্ট কেন আপনারা করতে যাচ্ছেন? আমি তো এটা আপনাকে বারবার ধরবো যে আপনি এখানকার ব্ল্যাক স্কার ফোল্ডার টপ স্কোরার হয়ে আপনি ডেটস নিয়ে বারবার কেন খেলছেন?
সরি ম্যাম।
নাইস ট্রাই, থ্যাংক ইউ।
নওশিন, আজকে আপনার কনসেপ্টগুলো ভালো ছিল, থট প্রসেসটা ভালো ছিল, বাট এক্সিকিউশন একটা ডিশের হয়নি। এটা খেতে ভালো লাগছে না, এটা খাওয়া যাচ্ছে না, এটার অথেন্টিসিটি আপনি নষ্ট করে দিয়েছেন। আচ্ছা, থ্যাংক ইউ।
নওশিন সবসময় আমাদের যে চমৎকার চমৎকার ডিশেস প্রেজেন্ট করে এসেছে, আমরা কিন্তু সেটা দেখেই অভ্যস্ত। তো এনিওয়ে আজকে ওই জায়গায় কোথাও একটা বড় ঘাটতি দেখতে পাচ্ছি। তো তারপরে বলবো সব কিছু মিলিয়ে ভালোই ছিল, গুড ট্রাই, থ্যাংক ইউ।
থ্যাংক ইউ রসুল। কোয়েশ্চেন?
কসম, ঠিক আছে।
বগুড়ার প্রতিযোগী তামান্না, আপনার ফুড নিয়ে দ্রুত চলে আসুন।
চিকেন স্টাফে শিমলা মরিচ করেছি, আর সাথে একটা তেঁতুলের সস দিয়েছি, আর হাটহাজারি মরিচের স্টাফিং দিয়েছি ভেতরে, চকলেট ময়েস্ট কাপকেক অ্যান্ড নাগা মরিচ দিয়ে চাট করেছি, কাটুরি চাট।
তামান্না, স্টার্টিং উইথ দ্য স্টাফড শিমলা মরিচ, এটা বাই নাও এটা একটা কমন রেসিপি হয়ে গেছে, অলমোস্ট সবাই স্টাফিং করেছে। আই রিয়েলি লাইক দি আইডিয়া অ্যান্ড হোল আইডিয়াটা ভালো ছিল, খেতে অনেক মজা। এটার কনসেপ্টটা ভালো ছিল, বাট টেস্ট ওয়াইজ ইটস ভেরি ভেরি অ্যাভারেজ। অলসো এটা কীভাবে করে খাবো সেটা বোঝাটা ডিফিকাল্ট ছিল, লাইক ভেঙে নাকি উপর থেকে স্পুন দিয়ে খাবো, সো এই কনসেপ্টটা আমার কাছে ক্লিয়ার না। কেকটা আমি এটাকে হাটহাজারি চিলি কেক বলে চালতে পারবো, বিকজ এটাতে কেকের চিলি ফ্লেভারটা আছে, রাইট? টেস্ট ওয়াইজ ইটস নট গ্রেট, বাট যারা চকলেট অ্যান্ড চিলি লাভার তাদেরকে আমি এটা ইজিলি সেল করতে পারবো। ইটস গুড এনাফ ফর মি। আপনার কস্টিং আজকে ঠিক আছে।
এটা আরও ছোট ছোট বানানো উচিত ছিল, জাস্ট ওয়ান বাইট। এই ধরনের খাবারগুলো সাধারণত যেটা হয় আমরা ফুচকা খাই, চাট খাই, সেটা কিন্তু ওয়ান বাইটেই, মানে আমিও ঠিক কিভাবে খাবো কিভাবে কাটবো চিন্তা করছিলাম। কেকটা আমার কাছে ভালোই লেগেছে, না মরিচের একটা ফ্লেভার পাচ্ছি, আর শিমলা মরিচ যেটা ছিল তোমার ওটা ভালোই ছিল। থ্যাংক ইউ, গুড ট্রাই।
চিকেন শিমলা মরিচ অসম, দেখতে সুন্দর আর কেকটাও খেতে মজা যদি বাট পাপড়ি চাটের আইডিয়াটা আপনার আমার মনে হয় এটা ঠিক হয়নি মানে পাপড়ি চাটে এই এত ঝাল মরিচ একটা দিয়ে এক বাইটসের পরে আর নেবে না এরকম একটা বিষয় হয়েছে বাকি দুটো রেসিপি দারুণ ছিল
থ্যাংক ইউ তামান্না।
আজকে আমি বানাচ্ছি শিমলা মরিচ স্টাফড শিমলা মরিচ বানাচ্ছি আমি চিকেন স্টাফ শিমলা মরিচ আর একটা বানাচ্ছি আমি হাটহাজারি মরিচ দিয়ে আমি প্রন রেডি করছি একটা সুইট চিলি প্রন আর একটা যেটা আমাদের যেটা বোম্বাই মরিচ দিয়েছে ওইটা দিয়ে আমি রেডি করছি একটা বিফ কোপ্তা কারি। আমি আজকে শিমলা মরিচ দিয়ে একটা স্টাফ চিকেন বানাচ্ছি আর হাটহাজারি দিয়ে একটা ময়েস্ট চকলেট ময়েস্ট কেক বানাচ্ছি আর বোম্বাই মরিচ দিয়ে একটা কাটুরি চাট বানাচ্ছি দেখা যাক কী হয়। আজকে আমি শিমলা মরিচ দিয়ে বানাবো শিমলা পুরি। অ্যাকচুয়ালি শিমলার মরিচের ভিতরে আমি পুর দিয়ে একটা রেসিপি করছি যার কারণে আমি নাম দিয়েছি শিমলা পুরি। অ্যান্ড আমি হাটহাজারি মরিচ দিয়ে একটা কুকি বানাবো হাটহাজারি জেলি কুকি আর হলো তার সাথে আমি বোম্বাই মরিচ দিয়ে প্রন দিয়ে একটা রেসিপি করব ওইটা এখনও নাম দিইনি ক্রিয়েট করার পরে দেখি কি নাম দেওয়া যায়।
মেন্টার্স, আজ বাক্স রহস্য এবং বাক্সের রহস্য উন্মোচিত হওয়ার পর আমরা দেখলাম 3 ধরনের মরিচ রয়েছে। ডান দিক থেকেই শুরু করি। ফেরদৌসারা, আপনার 4 জন পার্টিসিপেন্টকে কি মনে হচ্ছে? যদিও আজকে সবার জন্য মেন্টার্স টাইম আউট নেই,
যেহেতু এটা টপ 10-এর একটা আজকে হচ্ছে 4র্থ দিন, সো আমি মনে করি যে কি তারা অবশ্যই কনফিডেন্ট তাদের ওই জায়গা থেকে যে কোনো কিছু দিলেই ওরা এটাকে ওভারকাম করতে পারবে এবং আমি সেটাই দেখছি সবাই সবার মতো কাজ করছে এবং খুব ভালোভাবে করছে। আর নওশিনের যে ব্যাপারটা ব্ল্যাক স্কার্ফটা যখন কেউ পায় কোনো পার্টিসিপেন্ট তখন কিন্তু তার মধ্যে একটা অন্যরকম প্রেশার কাজ করে। ওর কাছে যখন আমি গেছি তখন ওরটা এবং আমারটা দুজন শেয়ার করেছি এবং বলেছি গ্রোসারিতে যেটা পাও তোমার যদি মনে হয় যে এর চেয়ে বেটার কিছু তুমি দিতে পারবা তুমি সেটাতেই চাইবা।
থ্যাংক ইউ। নাদিয়া, নাতাশা, আপনার পার্টিসিপেন্ট একদম আপনার চোখের সামনেই রয়েছেন, খুব কাছাকাছি দেখছেন, বারবার আমি লক্ষ্য করছিলাম। কি মনে হয় আজ?
আমার কাছে মনে হচ্ছে সে দেশি ফুডে কমফোর্টেবল এবং ওরকমই কোনো ডিশ বেছে নিয়েছে। সুন্দর স্মেল আসছে পুরো থেকেই আমাদের মঞ্চ থেকেই। সো আমরা মনে হয় খুব ভালো কিছু ডিশ পেতে যাচ্ছি।
থ্যাংক ইউ নাদিয়া, নাতাশা। মাহফুজুর রহমান, আপনার 2 জন পার্টিসিপেন্ট রয়েছেন, সাফাইয়াত আর নিশাদ। কি মনে হয় আপনার এরা 2 জন কতটা ভালো করবে আজ?
যখন বলা হলো যে মেন্টাস টাইম আউট নেই তারা দেখলাম যে একটু চিন্তিত হয়ে গেছে। তারপর যখন বলা হলো মেন্টাস টাইম আউট নিলে তাদের যে কনফিডেন্সের নাম্বারটা কমে আসবে, তখন দেখলাম যে তারা কেউই আর মেন্টাস টাইম আউট চায়নি। আমার কাছে মনে হয় তারা সবাই খুব ভালোভাবে সুন্দরভাবে রেসিপি উপহার দিতে পারবে, আমি আশা করি। দেখা যাক কি হয়।
নিশ্চয়ই। আইডি সাতিয়ার, আপনার একজন পার্টিসিপেন্ট রয়েছেন জুয়াইরিয়া, যেটা আপনি গত পর্বে বলেছেন যে জুয়াইরিয়াকে দেখেন আপনি একরকম যেটা হয়তো করবে, কিন্তু যখন ফুডটা সার্ভ করে তখন দেখা যায় যে অন্য ডিশ নিয়ে এসেছে। সো আজকে আপনি কতটুকু কনফিডেন্ট জুয়াইরিয়াকে নিয়ে?
অত বেশি কনফিডেন্স না, বাট ওরা জুয়ারে যে স্পিডে কাজ করছে আমার মনে হচ্ছে সে তার ডিশগুলো নিয়ে কনফিডেন্ট। এখন কী ডিশ রান্না করছে সেটা তো আজকে মেন্টার্স টাইম আউট নেই তাই বলতে পারছি না। শুধু জুয়াইরিয়া না, আমি আদার যে 9 জন আছে তাদেরকেও দেখছি যে অনেকটা ইমপ্রুভ আর কি, যে ওরা যে স্পিড নিয়ে কাজ করছে। 3টা মরিচ, মাকুস ভাই যেটা বললো যে 3 রকমের টেস্ট, ঝালের ব্যালেন্সটা, ওইটা যদি ব্যালেন্স করতে পারে আমার মনে হয় এই কনফিডেন্টেই ওরা আজকে কিছু না কিছু একটা ছক্কা মেরে দিতে পারে।
একদম ছক্কা পেটানো বলে কথা, দেখা যাক। সাদিয়া তাহে দুজন পার্টিসিপেন্ট রয়েছেন, তার মধ্যে একজন গত পর্বের লোয়েস্ট স্কোরার। সো লিনাকে নিয়ে আজ কতটা টেনশনে আছেন আপনি?
যেহেতু লাস্ট পর্বে সে লোয়েস্ট স্কোরার ছিল, আজকে যদি অনেক ভালো পারফরমেন্স না দেয় তাহলে এলিমিনেট হয়ে যাওয়ার একটা চান্সেস আছে। আমি আজকে হোপ করছি তারা যাতে রেসিপি সিলেকশনটা ভালো করে। আজকে মরিচ দিয়ে কিন্তু অনেক রকমের রেসিপিস হয় আমরা জানি, বাট এখানে আসলে গেমটা এই জায়গায় যে তারা কোন রেসিপিটা সিলেক্ট করছে আর ব্যালেন্সটা কিভাবে করছে।
রাইট,
সো এটা যদি প্রপার করতে পারে তাহলে আমার মনে হয় আজকে সবাই খুব ভালো করবে।
উই হোপ যে আজকে সবাই খুব ভালো করবে। থ্যাংক ইউ।
লেমন রাইস বলতে একদমই লেমনের স্মেল পাচ্ছি, খুবই দারুণ খেতে। সেই সাথে আবার সরিষা ভাপা ইলিশ, যেটা ভাতের সাথে খেতে আসলে আমি শুধু থাকলে হাত দিয়ে পুরোটাই খেতাম। তার সাথে আবার আরেকটা টমেটোর মধ্যে যে বড়া করেছে, এটা অন্য ধরনের অন্য রকমের একটা ফ্লেভার।
কুমিল্লার সাফায়াত, আপনার ফুড নিয়ে চলে আসুন।
ম্যাম আমি হচ্ছে প্রথমে যেটা করেছি সেটা হচ্ছে টমেটোর ঝালে চিংড়ির রস বড়া, আর দ্বিতীয়ত আমি করেছি মেন ডিশ হিসাবে ইলিশ মাছ, সেটা হচ্ছে টক দইয়ে সরষে ইলিশ ভাপা, আর সাথে লেমন রাইস।
সাফায়াত,
ম্যাম
আমার কাছে ভালো লেগেছে, সবার থেকে একটু আলাদা, ব্যতিক্রম পেলাম। আর বিশেষ করে স্পেশালি প্রনটা, চিংড়ির যে রস বড়া একদম সেরকমই হয়েছে। ইলিশ মাছটাও ভালো ছিল, লেমন রাইস দিয়ে খেতে আরও মজা লেগেছে। সব কিছু মিলিয়ে গুড ট্রাই ছিল।
থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ।
থ্যাংক ইউ।
ফুডের ঝালটা আমার খুব ভালো লাগছে। এতগুলো ফুড, তেল ছাড়া রান্নার, এতগুলো ডাম্পলিং, এটা সেটা অনেক কিছু খাওয়ার পর একটা ডিফারেন্ট টাইপ বাঙালি স্টাইলের একটা ফুড এসেছে, যেখানে লেমন রাইস বলতে একদমই লেমনের স্মেল পাচ্ছি, খুবই দারুণ খেতে। সেই সাথে আবার সরিষা ভাপা ইলিশ, যেটা ভাতের সাথে খেতে আসলে আমি শুধু থাকলে হাত দিয়ে পুরোটাই খেতাম। তার সাথে আবার আরেকটা টমেটোর মধ্যে যে বড়া করেছে, এটা অন্য ধরনের অন্য রকমের একটা ফ্লেভার।
অসম, থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ।
Shafat, first of all, thank you for bringing something new. সবার কনসেপ্ট আজকে মোরলেস সেম ছিল, রাইট? মোমো, ডাম্পলিং, আপনি কমপ্লিটলি ডিফারেন্ট বাংলাদেশি কুইজিন নিয়ে এসেছেন, তেল ছাড়া রান্না। আপনার কনসেপ্ট, প্লেটিং, টেস্ট অ্যাবসলুটলি ওয়াও।
থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ।
খুবই মজা ছিল। আমি প্রতিটা জিনিস ট্রাই করেছি 2-3বার নিয়ে, রাইট? এটা আই থিঙ্ক আমি 4টা বড়া ননস্টপ খেয়ে ফেলেছি, এটা এত মজা।
থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ।
কস্টিংটা আমাকে একটু এক্সপ্লেন করতে হবে। সো এটা আপনার প্রথমে জি বলতেছে, আপনি কি ওখানে আরো অ্যাডিশনাল এক্সট্রা?
এটা হচ্ছে মূলত আমার এটার জন্য আমি 10 পিসি দিছি এখানে,
ঠিক আছে।
আমার শুধুমাত্র রাইসটা এখানে এডিশনাল আছে, আর বাড়তি আর কিছু নাই আমার।
তো এটা কি
3 জনের যেটা আসছে পোর্শন, এটাকে আমি হচ্ছে 3 দিয়ে ভাগ করছি, যেহেতু আমার একজনের পোর্শন বের করতে হবে, আমি একজনেরটা এখানে করি। আমার হয়তো এখানে একটু মানে তাড়াহুড়োয় গিয়ে অঙ্কটা একটু মিসম্যাচ হয়ে গেছে।
এক্স্যাক্টলি।
বাকি আমার থট হচ্ছে এটা যে আমার 3 জনের প্রাইস, এটা 3 জনের প্রাইস থেকে আমি একজনের প্রাইসটা বের করবো, একজনের সেলিং প্রাইস হবে আমার এটা।
তারপরে কিন্তু গুণ করেন নাই, 3 দিয়ে এটা গুণ করছেন।
আমি ওই যে মানে তাড়াহুড়োর জন্য আর গুণটা করি না, একটা
কস্টিংটা প্রপার হয় নাই, আমি সেটাই বলতে চাচ্ছি। থ্যাংক ইউ।
থ্যাংক ইউ সো ট্রাক।
থ্যাংক ইউ সাফায়াত।
থ্যাংক ইউ।